Hey, how you doing?
That's fine.
Give me 2 double bun burgers and a chocolate shake, please.
Is that it? Hey, knock yourself out, dude.
Knock myself out? What does that mean?
What you're watching right now is one of the scenes from a movie called Double Whammy, starring Dennis Leary and Steve Buscemi, released in 2001. The plot centers around New York City detective Ray Pluto, who's become somewhat of a laughingstock to the department because of a huge blunder during an active shooter situation. This movie is for sure a comedy with a bit of a dark twist, but the main plot of the film is what really stands out to me. The plot involves a Hispanic girl from the Manhattan section of New York City who attends an all-girls Catholic school and has a very strict father. Her friends make fun of her because they have freedom to do certain things and she doesn't, something I'm sure lots of people can relate to. But then she decides that the best way to get rid of her problem is to get rid of her problem being her father. She enlists the help of 2 local thugs and makes one simple request: kill him. Nobody but one detective, whom doesn't get along with Ray, ever suspects that she put this evil plan into motion, until the very end, where it becomes clear to Detective Pluto that this man's own daughter really might have been responsible. Now, I won't say today's story was the source of inspiration for this movie's plot, but it does make me think of that old saying, art imitates life, because this is definitely something I've heard of before, except it wasn't in a movie. But how close does this dark plot compare to reality? All families have issues at one point or the other. Some disagreements lead to not talking to family anymore. Other disagreements lead to disowning family. Some issues can be resolved, but then there are other times where things take a bizarre twist and everyone is left with more questions than answers. Today on Evil Intentions, the story of Arelis Batista. Arelis Batista was an 18-year-old Dominican girl who resided in the uptown section of Manhattan. She was born to her mother, a woman named William Batista, and her father, a man by the name of William Batista. The family resided on West 152nd Street and were known as a tight-knit religious family. William Batista was described as a hard-working father who moved here from the Dominican Republic years ago, looking to create a better life for himself and his family. William held a job at the former Drake Hotel on 56th Street and Park Avenue as part of their housekeeping staff. The hotel has since been replaced by a residential skyscraper. By the time that 1995 rolled around, the Batistas were known fixtures in their community for more than 20 years already. It was said that William and Miriam did their absolute best to try to shield their children from the dangers of growing up in a neighborhood that had drugs, crime, and everything else you could think of. Of course, a huge concern that many parents face when raising kids somewhere like New York City. William worked hard and saved every last bit of money that he could because he wanted to make sure him and his family had a good fallback if anything ever happened, and also because he wanted to pay for his kids to go to Catholic school. Arelis was described as a quiet and soft-spoken girl who was about her studies. She attended Mother Cabrini High School, an all-girls school located on West 190th Street in Washington Heights. She was known to have a good relationship with her father, but she was known to have an extremely close relationship with her mother. The two were inseparable. She went everywhere with her mom. She was described as the kind of girl that would never defy her loving parents. Arelis' brother, 14-year-old William Jr., attended environmental studies in Manhattan. He was described by students and loved ones as being an outgoing kid who loved sports. He grew up in the church and was an altar boy who had dreams of someday becoming a lawyer. Aside from his schoolwork and time with friends, he would spend his time caring for his pet pigeons and doves that he had well trained. Now, from the outside looking in, everything looked to be perfect with this family. Nobody ever expected that anything could be brewing behind closed doors. But as often is the case, things aren't always what they seem. While most people knew exactly what the Batistas were like and knew they were a family who all loved one another, others saw things from a different angle. When it came to Arelis, friends and classmates often saw another side of her. It was said that she would often complain to her friends about hating her father for how strict he was. The young 18-year-old yearned for a taste of freedom, as would anyone that age. But her father didn't agree with her choices in dating, and he didn't feel right letting her out into the world just yet. Now, hate is a strong word, and sometimes it can be used loosely, but it became apparent that Arelis was truly at odds with the fact that she didn't have any freedom at all. Others who didn't want to be identified would state that Arelis could sometimes be seen drinking booze out of a disposable cup in her school lunchroom. If this is true, a major sign of stress and perhaps dealing with something deeply troubling. According to sources, she would often sneak out of her family's apartment at night and spend times with boys she'd been getting to know. She would sneak out as her mom slept and while her dad worked his overnight shift at the hotel. One of the people Arelis would spend her time with was a man by the name of Lamar Sanchez, an 18-year-old who lived around the corner on Broadway. Sanchez was described by others as someone who'd always wanted to have a shot with Arelis, while others say he was her boyfriend. Arelis and Sanchez would sometimes meet after school according to her friends. But whatever relationship the two had would come to an end when Arelis broke things off. She did this because Sanchez was far too aggressive with her when the two were intimate, or attempting to be, according to those who knew her. The late-night meetups between Sanchez and Arelis were one of those things that some knew about, while others just never really saw this side of the teen. But apparently, Arelis led a double life, and the events of October 20th, 1995 would reveal a dual portrait of a girl who was shy to some, but to others, very deceptive. And while the people who were involved in this ordeal aren't here to speak for themselves today, the events that took place shocked the Manhattan neighborhood. Arelis had apparently reached the end of her rope. She wanted to be left to make her own choices and do what she wanted. The only way she saw this being possible was if she severed her daughter-father relationship with William, meaning she wanted him out of her life entirely. She would contact Lamar Sanchez and make a request. She wanted her father dead, and she wanted Sanchez to help her carry out the plan. Before you knew it, the teen's plan was in motion, leading us to the morning of October 20th of 1995. On this morning, between 1:30 and 2 a.m., according to reports, Arelis would let Sanchez into her apartment through her bedroom window while her mother and little brother slept. As the two waited for Arelis' father to return from work, Sanchez would then let another man in through the front door, a 24-year-old friend named Jose Rodriguez. Now, according to neighbors, this man was described as a sadist who had a long history of strange and violent tendencies. Things like throwing dogs and other animals from the rooftop with M80 firecrackers attached to them. On one occasion, neighbors would catch Rodriguez attempting to crush a dog's head between a door in the building's basement. Some heard the cries of the dog and made him stop. It was also said that he would carry a list around with him, a list of people he wanted to kill. After spending time in Florida and going nearly broke, Rodriguez would return to NYC and was desperate for money. Arelis had already informed Sanchez that if he and Rodriguez carried out this murder-for-hire plot, they could take the $25,000 in savings her father had locked away in the home. He kept his funds here since he didn't trust banks. After being promised every bit of life savings William worked so hard for, this seemed like a no-brainer to Rodriguez. But unbeknownst to Arelis, the plan had changed. Arelis' father wasn't home and Sanchez and Rodriguez came up with a different plan: to eliminate whoever was in the home, leaving no witnesses. It was then that Sanchez would take the silencer-equipped gun, point it at Arelis, close his eyes, and pull the trigger. But the safety was still on. Arelis thought this was a joke, but then Rodriguez would reach over, take off the safety, and said, "Do it." Sanchez again closed his eyes and pulled the trigger, striking Arelis once in the head, killing her instantly. Rodriguez would then make his way to another bedroom where Arelis' mother Miriam and little brother William lie face down sleeping. He would shoot them both in the back of the head as they slept, killing them as well. The two would then make their way to the closet where the money was hidden, and they ripped the door off the hinges, taking the money and splitting it two ways. William Batista would come home from work at around 7 a.m. to find his entire family slaughtered, and he had no idea why. Cops were alerted to Sanchez's involvement when a detective from the 30th Precinct recalled having an interview with Sanchez when they were investigating claims of an assault and kidnapping attempt involving Arelis. The report was filed by Arelis in February of that year, and apparently was only ever filed to make her father happy. Sanchez and Rodriguez would take the money they'd stolen and spend some of it on clothes. And in truly evil fashion, Rodriguez had an idea: to take some of that money they'd stolen and order a mixed basket of flowers and carnations to send to the family on the day of the wake, the same family that they were responsible for slaughtering. On Monday, October 23rd, as more than 200 mourners walked past 3 open coffins, confused and utterly shocked at this tragedy, reality set in and the truth would slowly unravel. Lamar Sanchez didn't only help send flowers to the wake of the 3 people he helped kill. He also attended the wake. A florist who delivered flowers to the wake noticed a rose that had begun to wilt. He would cut the rose and he tried handing it to Sanchez, since he thought it would be nice to have that rose on Arelis' coffin, but Sanchez wouldn't touch it. Now, I'm not sure who has this belief or how accurate this may be. I did ask some of my Dominican friends who'd never heard of this. Maybe it's something the older generation is familiar with. But according to some, in Dominican culture, it's said that sometimes, if a killer attends the wake of the person they killed, the dead will find a way to talk and let their loved ones know that the person responsible is in the same room. And during the wake, 14-year-old William began to bleed from his ear. Carlos Mamcayo, the florist who had tried to give Sanchez that rose earlier, said that when they saw that, everyone knew the murderer was in the church. The death of these 3 family members in Manhattan would send feelings of shock, confusion, and disbelief through the community. Some just couldn't believe that this man's daughter had, number 1, ever put such a heinous and permanent plan into motion to begin with, and number 2, they couldn't believe how this plan went so horribly wrong, and innocent lives were taken in the process. There was just no way this could ever be the case. But detectives were sure of the information they'd received. Other information confirmed it. At the end of the day, we're left to believe the words of 2 monsters who carried out this vicious act with no second thought. Maybe she never arranged this at all. Or maybe, just maybe, much like Detective Pluto, nobody realized it until it was too late. Sanchez was sentenced to life without parole, and Rodriguez was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison. Rest in peace to all the lives lost that day.